Guys! So when we last left our little band of three, Colin had just gone into the secret garden for the very first time, and he says, I shall live forever and ever. Chapter 21, which we will start today, is called Ben Weatherstaff. One of the strange things about living in the world is that it is only now and then one is quite sure one is going to live forever and ever. One knows it sometimes when one gets up at the tender, solemn dawn time and goes out and stands alone and throws one's head far back and looks up and watches the pale sky slowly changing and flushing and marvelous unknown things happening until the east almost makes one cry out and one's heart stands still at the strange, unchanging majesty of the rising sun, which has been happening every morning for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. One knows it then for a moment or so. And one knows it sometimes when one stands by oneself in a wood at sunset, and the mysterious deep gold stillness slanting through and under the branches seems to be saying slowly, again and again, something one cannot quite hear, however much one tries. Then sometimes the immense quiet of the dark blue at night with millions of stars waiting and watching makes one sure, and sometimes the sound of far-off music makes it true, and sometimes a look in someone's eyes. And it was like that with Colin when he first saw and heard the springtime inside the four high walls of the hidden garden. That afternoon the whole world seemed to devote itself to being perfect and radiantly beautiful and kind to one boy. Perhaps out of pure heavenly goodness the spring came and crowded everything it possibly could into that one place. More than once Dickon paused in what he was doing and stood still with a sort of growing wonder in his eyes, shaking his head softly. "Eh? It is Gradely," he said. "I'm 12 going on 13, and there's a lot of afternoons in 13 years, but it seems to me I never seed one as Gradely as this year." "Aye, it is a Gradely one," said Mary as she sighed for mere joy. "I'll warrant it's the Gradeliest one as ever was in the world." "Dost thou think," said Colin with dreamy carefulness, "as happen it was made like this here all a purpose for me?" "My word," cried Mary admiringly, "that there is a bit of good Yorkshire. Thou'rt shapen first rate, thou art." And delight reigned. They drew the chair under the plum tree, which was snow white with blossoms and musical with bees. It was like a king's canopy, a fairy king's. There were flowering cherry trees near and apple trees whose buds were pink and white, and here and there one had burst open wide. Between the blossoming branches of the canopy, bits of blue sky looked down like wonderful eyes. Mary and Dickon worked a little here and there, and Colin watched them. They brought him things to look at. Buds which were opening, buds which were tight closed, bits of twig whose leaves were just showing green, the feather of a woodpecker which had dropped on the grass, the empty shell of some bird early hatched. Dickon pushed the chair slowly round and round the garden, stopping every other moment to let him look at wonders springing out of the earth or trailing down from trees. It was like being taken in state round the country of a magic king and queen and shown all the mysterious riches it contained. "I wonder if we shall see the robin," said Colin. "Thou'lt see him eno after a bit," answered Dickon. "When the eggs hatches out of the little chap he'll be kept so busy it'll make his head swim. Thou'll see him flying backward and forward carrying worms nigh and big as himself. And that much noise going on in the nest when he gets there as fair flusters him so he scarce knows which big mouth to drop the first piece in. And gaping beaks and squawking on every side. Mother says as when she sees the work a robin has to keep them gaping beaks filled, she feels like she was a lady with nothing to do. She says she's seen the little chaps when it seemed like the sweat must be dropping off 'em though folks can't see it." This made them giggle so delightedly that they were obliged to cover their mouths with their hands, remembering that they must not be heard. Colin had been instructed as to the law of whispers and low voices several days before. He liked the mysteriousness of it, and did his best, but in the midst of excited enjoyment it was rather difficult to keep a laugh above a whisper, never to laugh above a whisper. Every moment of the afternoon was full of new things, and every hour the sunshine grew more golden. The wheeled chair had been drawn back under the canopy, and Dickon had sat down on the grass and had just drawn out his pipe when Colin saw something he had not had time to notice before. "That's a very old tree over there, isn't it?" he said. Dickon looked across the grass at the tree, and Mary looked, and there was a brief moment of stillness. Yes, answered Dickon after it, and his low voice had a very gentle sound. Mary gazed at the tree and thought. The branches are quite grey, and there's not a single leaf anywhere, Colin went on. It's quite dead, isn't it? Aye, admitted Dickon, but them roses as has climbed all over it will near hide every bit of the dead wood when they're full of leaves and flowers. It won't look dead to them. It'll be the prettiest of 'em all. Mary gazed at the tree and thought. It looks as if a big branch had been broken off, said Colin. I wonder how it was done. So just to pause, remember this is the tree, Mrs. Craven's favorite tree, and we know the story of when she was pregnant with Colin, she fell out of the tree and he was born early and she died. But Colin doesn't know this story. It's been many a year, answered Dickon. And with a sudden relieved start and laying his hand on Colin, look at that robin, there he is. He's been foraging for his mate. Colin was almost too late, but he just caught sight of him, the flash of red-breasted bird with something in his beak. He darted through the greenness and into the close-grown corner and was out of sight. Colin leaned back on his cushion again, laughing a little. He's taking her tea to her. Perhaps it's 5 o'clock. I think I'll take some tea myself. And so they were safe. I don't think Dickon and Mary were ready to tell Colin the story of the tree and really the true story of the garden and why it's locked up. So there's still secrets in this house.